So, Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist have recently released their surprise sequel, Alfredo 2. Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist have honestly had a very interesting relationship with each other. They released 5 years ago Alfredo 1. Well, now it's titled Alfredo 1 because now this album's Alfredo 2. But yeah, that album was just something very special. It was an album that just came out of nowhere. I think they even released the teaser track for that album in 1985 the day before the album dropped or a couple hours before, something like that. Like they just did it like that sporadically. And it was just something that was just very special, mainly because not only was it a surprise album, but it was just something that was so well made. And the mere fact that they kept it hidden from the public eye was just something that was just incredible to witness. That we can actually get a surprise album that feels like an actual surprise. And aside of that, I think the entire production that the first album had was just genuinely top notch. I think The Alchemist did such a great job combining these dark and gritty elements that he's known for whenever producing, at the same time putting this like little sparkle and these like luxurious type samples that kind of make you feel like you're like witnessing some sort of like mafia moving going on. Like songs like Scotty Beam or something I want to rap about feel like these two like sonically completely different yet similar songs. They're sort of relaxing progressions. Their samples are just very enchanting, and despite the loop going on and on and on during the entire song, it feels like it's just something that's like natural, and you don't mind listening to it a billion more times. And it was also thanks to that production that kind of set the base for Freddie Gibbs to really rap very well and perform excellent on all of those beats. It feels like he never has anything just to lose in terms of subject matter. Well, he would repeat some things that we've heard in the past. It feels like he's always locked in, always has something fresh going on. He never seems bored in any of the songs that he's ever made with The Alchemist, especially on that album. It almost felt like a match made in heaven moment in which we were witnessing Freddie kind of enter his second prime with another producer outside of Madlib. In terms of solo careers, they've done a lot of things ever since Alfredo. Gibbs has put out, I believe, has been 2 solo albums that have been actually really good and definitely worth checking out. And I think The Alchemist, as I said, helped made Bo Jackson with Boldy James, and he also did Super Techno Bo with Boldy James. He also just released one with Larry June and 2 Chainz not that long ago. And he also made that Currency collab album called Continuance, which I think is really underrated. As well as other multiple projects that he's done, like short EPs and 4-packs and all a bunch of stuff. Like he has never rested ever since. But yeah, I think it was very surprising to everybody when out of the blue, we hear that Alfredo 2 was an actual thing that was going to happen. And they've released the track 1995, the intro of the album. And it's obviously a sequel to 1985, the intro track from Alfredo Part 1. And you could just hear the difference in terms of how they feel and just how they sound sonically. Like, it's a huge difference. 1985, it's much more sporadic, and here's this and here's that. You got this electric guitar, this punchy drums. It's like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that, and then it's over. But with 1995, it feels like it just progresses into something even better than what we heard the last minute. It's a song that's just constantly evolving, and I love that Freddie's rapping still sounds as sharp as ever, and he doesn't feel that it doesn't feel like he's lost throughout the entire beat. If anything, this is something that he just wanted to make for a long time. And it just feels like he's just entering another prime in his life, rapping on this instrumental. And I really like those little harmonies that Freddie sings in the background. And I think some funny lines in there were that he should stop chasing every ruby rose and amber rose. I think it's in reference to his relationship, these relationships that he's been during these 5 years in which it's been very tumultuous. But aside of that stellar intro that really sets the tone for the album, as well as like that song ending in this like sample of these 2 men just talking to each other, and one is speaking Japanese and the other one English, it was interesting because, you know, the album cover is basically ramen, and the title's called Alfredo. I know that's supposed to mean like Alchemist and Freddie Gibbs, like their names combined. But it was kind of like a cool like double entendre moment, because in the first album it's a little like Godfather reference with, you know, the hand and then the Alfredo pasta. But now with this one it's like ramen, And it seems that stylistically they're aiming for a much more Japanese style. And I think I believe they made a movie to Alfredo, this album at least, in which they filmed it in Japan. And I think they opened like this like restaurant in like Shibuya, if I'm not mistaken. They're like hiring people. I don't know if that's part of the role. That's an actual thing, but they were doing that thing to kind of get into that like album setting, like that conceptual thing that's like really hitting. But yeah, I thought it was just very interesting to see how they were shifting from the Italian mobster era and energy that they channeled in the first album to then shifting to like something a bit more like Japanese mafia-esque. Alfredo 2, in general, is an album that has so many things going on. I mean, it's a longer album than the first part. I think this one was 14 songs. The last one was like 10 songs. So it has much more to say and much more to do. And I think that thanks to that free will that Gibbs and The Alchemist have, it makes this album an even more entertaining experience than the first part, which I think it's something crazy to say, and I wasn't believing it until I kept on listening to this album over and over and over. And I was realizing that I was loving this album more with every single listen, to the point that I just was just getting too hooked on it on just such a short, span of this album already being out. I was a little bit worried with this album at first, mainly because I was like, I feel that it might feel a little bit too similar and too familiar, and I might be burnt out with this album quickly. But if anything, I was proven very wrong. I think Freddie's flow and his raps and everything are still sharp as ever, and I don't think I can ever get sick of it. The track Mar-a-Lago features this very nice and just like exciting sample playing in the background, and then it transitions to this very dark and grimy beat. It's almost similar to God is Perfect or Frank Lucas or some of those dirtier and grungier tracks, but at the same time still having this like nice, almost like exotic sample playing in the background where it sounds almost like a jazz lounge. I think him channeling that energy was just incredible overall, and it was very interesting just to hear his energy just not even like just stopping almost for a single second. I was a little bit disappointed at first because I thought the song was a little bit too short, but the more times I listened to it, the more I was like, this kind of makes sense. He was really locked in, barely left any sort of like room to breathe. The track Lemon Pepper Steppers kind of embodies that exact same energy, except it's a bit more abrupt. The song kind of like teases you that it's going to be a bit more mellow, but then transitions to a darker sample in the previous song, and then it swaps back to the first sample that was introduced, and then it does that back and forth and back and forth. I thought it was a very nice, refreshing way that The Alchemist uses production, so it doesn't get a bit too stagnant early on. And it also gives Freddie a lot of room to breathe in terms of his flow and his cadence and the things that he wants to say on the track. Subject matter wise, on this album, I was very surprised because Freddie does get very personal at times. I know that he got very personal on his last album. I think it was You Only Die Twice, if I'm not mistaken. I probably messed up the entire name. But the thing is that he got very vulnerable in this album at times, which is very surprising. I think the track Empanadas and Skinny Suge too, he's kind of detailing more about his personal relationships, and also his fallout with his fellow colleagues. As in Empanadas, he is addressing the entire Benny the Butcher situation in which he got jumped, and saying that he still stood his head high and just kind of like ignored that thing in general. But that relationship is probably far from being repaired due to how, I guess, just sudden it was, and how much it just created a huge beef between the two. And Skinny Suge too, it's very interesting because the first song back in Alfredo Part 1, it was a very like intimate moment for Freddie Gibbs, in which he's detailing death, grief, depression, all these things that he's experienced and seen, and it's a very dark and sentimental song, one of his darkest songs ever. And on this song, while it isn't as dark as that previous song, it still feels like it's a worthy successor in its way, because it's still Gibbs kind of rapping over his own personal things, his own personal relationships, his success, the way he's dealing with it, his evolution, everything in general. And I feel that it's just very interesting to see. And I also love this beat. Like, The Alchemist went crazy on this beat. It has like this like sample part where it almost sounds like a vox or like a lead. I'm still confused if it's a synthesizer or a vox. Like, it generally sounds like it's super pitched up, but in a way that's not too annoying, if anything. I love how slow-paced the drums are. Kind of gives it like that punch, but at the same time doesn't go too quickly. Kind of like just It's like there, and it's good enough for Gibbs to rap on. Now, Alfredo Part One had Rick Ross, Tyler the Creator, Conway the Machine, Benny the Butcher, names like that attached to it, which made the album even more interesting. And in this album we have features from Anderson .Paak, J.D. and Larry June. It's a huge shift from the first album. And at first I was like a little bit 50-50 with it, because I was like, I kind of wanted an extra Tyler verse, maybe a Pusha T verse, people from that lane. It kind of seemed that both Freddie and The Alchemist kind of wanted to centralize this album more on Gibbs himself, so he has more time to rap on and entertain, as well as Alchemist who flexes producing muscles. And generally, I wasn't that disappointed with these features. I was very surprised by how well JID rapped on in Gold Feet. I think he just really went off. I was a little bit worried because this production is so low-key in general, to the point that I feel that any like simple like verse from JID in which he goes crazy on his flows would feel a bit awkward. But if anything, it just enhanced the entire listening experience. And thankfully, it's even better kind of listening to it like with headphones on or something. The way the sample is mixed, like this very nice piano loop playing, it almost sounds like you're drifting away. And just JID just again flowing his ass off in here. It's crazy to even see. Like, you should just read the rhyme scales. He was going crazy. And even the parts where I thought he was going to slow down or just stop, he went on and on and on and on, and just went harder and harder and harder, which just shows how much JD really cares, even for a small feature like this. I think the track Ensalada featuring Anderson .Paak was also an incredible song, probably one, if not my favorite song in the entire record. It's just straight up smooth, chill. It's one hell of a vibe. The hook is infectious, and Gibbs is just locked in on this song performance-wise, and I feel that it's their best performance to date, surpassing Giannis. And I believe that one song he made with Raekwon and Anderson .Paak on his solo record not that long ago. Again, I just really love the entire vibe of the song. It's just chill, it's minimalistic, it's something that's very laid back. You can listen to it in the car, which I did a bunch of times, and I just had to keep on rewinding the song. I almost didn't get past this album just because of that one song. And I also just love the harmonies that Anderson .Paak builds on this entire song. It gives a lot of room for him to say what he wants to say, get it off his chest. It almost feels like very therapeutic for Gibbs to just say the things that he's saying on this song, and just layered with Anderson's this great voice overall, and the very lush and dream production thanks to The Alchemist. I think the only feature that I just didn't love overall was the Larry June feature on the track Feeling. I think the beat is incredible. It's been stuck in my head, honestly, and it has like a nice rhythm and flow and everything, but I feel that Larry June's just voice and overall performance just kind of felt very lackluster. I know that he typically has this very monotone voice, and I don't necessarily mind that, but on this song it kind of feels way too sleepy, and I feel like the sing-songish voice that Gibbs has during the entire track isn't enough to save the song. At first it was a bit annoying, then it kind of grew on me a little bit more, but even then I'm still not crazy over the song. I still love the beat, but I think more things could have happened with this song. I'm not entirely sure if it's in a track Mar-a-Lago or if it's in a track Shangri-La, but I believe that Freddie kind of just implies that, again, his relationships has been rocky, and the things that he's gone through personally that's now been in the public eye, and it's very interesting just to see his progression through his entire record of you can't trust anybody, you can't trust these women, you can't trust anything, to then having a track like I Still Love Her, in which he's admitting that, hey, he feels like a hypocrite. He knows that this person he's talking about isn't necessarily the greatest thing ever, but to him it's the greatest thing ever. Obviously that person has flaws, but despite all of that, I still love her. And I think the beat is just very nice. I think that piano, that drums that are playing in the background feels very Hit Boy-esque, very Hit Boy and Nas-esque. It could easily have been in one of those albums. It just kind of gives you those storytelling vibes, and Freddie really does tell a decent story of this relationship with this woman. I was completely mind blown by the track Gas Station Sushi, in which Gibbs just goes off on this very exotic beat and leaves these very funny lines. I believe he says I'm gonna leave you guys, I'm gonna leave these guys dookie, garden station, like gas station sushi, because he's implying that gas station sushi is terrible, or something like that. But he really goes off in his entire song, performance wise, just lyrically. He kind of leaves like funny one liners like that, which kind of make the song very memorable. And again, the beat in here is just fantastic overall from the Alchemist side. And it's very interesting because, despite the very like laid back production, he can really be aggressive at times. The track Jean Claude has these lines like, this is like, life is like a blood sport, it's Jean Claude. You gotta be like on guard all the time. You can't just, like leave your guard down. Everybody's gonna go in there and gun you. This is why I have trust issues and stuff. And I believe in that same song, or in the song Shangri-La, I think, he does mention this very interesting line in which it's about like white supremacy. It's like, white supremacy still exists, and it's, it hates our community, but at the same time we're killing our own community by like kind of breaking down each other. We're doing like also more hatred. It's a very like random line now thinking about it, like just saying it without context, but within the song it really works well, and it kind of sticked out to me a lot because just the way that Gibbs is kind of like narrating these issues and all these social issues that sometimes goes on and he wants to vent about at points in his album. I absolutely adore the track Lavish Habits because it's another short, aggressive Gibbs track with some very nice production, but he really goes off in terms of the people that he hates and dissed. I mean, like a few lines into the song, he's saying stuff like he wants to grab DJ Academic's fat titties, and he wants to and he's calling out Gunna for taking the plea deal and a bunch of other stuff. It's almost like a like overall the song I think is much more like I'm living these lavish habits. I'm like living this like high life. And there's people out here that want to like drag me down, and I'm gonna address this thing on a song, which I found it to be very just funny and just entertaining overall. There's also like a line that he drops in here, one of those songs in which he talks about the currency situation. For those who don't know, I think that Gibbs and Currency had some sort of issue and beef. They made an album together with The Alchemist, but apparently an issue happened that I think Currency wasn't promoting the album enough, and Gibbs kind of got like upset with that, and he kind of like severed his ties with Currency because of it, and some other reasons I think, in which they just kind of had a fallout. Because I think in one of the songs he mentions that he's like the better one rapping over The Alchemist production. Like a thought that occurred to me as well was that some of these beats feel like they could have been in a Alchemist slash Currency album. Like compare this to Continuance. Like there's some beats in here that flat out feel like a beat that could have been in that album. Like the lavish lifestyle, the way that they would flow on in these beats. I could just envision it and picture it. It's a bit of a shame that they had the beef because Currency would have been perfect for this album. But yeah, I was just like kind of like thinking and visualizing it. Obviously, it's made by the same producer, The Alchemist. But I think in a conceptual sense, they both have so much similar themes surrounding their songs that it just kind of like reminded me of like, damn, like Gibbs is kind of like just standing up and just saying like, I do this thing better than you, which I thought was just crazy in general. I think the closing track, 1,000 Mountains, really summarizes this record perfectly. This record kind of started off with Gibbs contemplating if he wanted to keep on going or not, because he feels that there are certain people that are like kind of like going after him, constantly threatening him, pressuring him, and he feels that he needs to sacrifice a part of himself to confront these issues and to kind of like just make amends or just be on top because everybody's gunning after him, and he feels that you just can't ever rest. To with this song 1,000 Mountains, feeling that despite all those things that will happen, he'll still feel the need to rap even like 1,000 years from now, or really basically until he dies, despite the lavish lifestyle that he has, and despite him making himself clear on many accounts that he kind of is in it for the money, for the better lifestyle, for his family, and for his own personal gain. But it kind of seems that he fell in love with hip hop and with rap. Since in this song he feels laid back, yet at the same time very energized, and he makes this very funny poke at Andre 3000, comparing himself to Andre 3000. He'll like go in a random mountain and just like start playing the flute and stuff while everybody is like angry at him for no reason, or just like kind of wasting their time, wasting their lives, because he feels that he's like in some sort of like nirvana. I think the song is like beyond perfect. It just has so many things going on with it, and I just think it's like a really good closing. It almost like it just makes you visualize like Gibbs like in Shibuya or in Japan, and like the credits like rolling, because this entire album feels like a movie within itself. Like overall, it just feels like it. Like the first part of Alfredo felt like an entire mobster film, and this one feels like Gibbs and like Japan just like strolling around with the alchemist, just talking about things, and he's like visiting these places and stuff. I don't know why I'm getting these visuals, but it kind of made me feel that way. And the alchemist has just phenomenal production overall on this song. That very nice flute melody and sample, just it's so intoxicating, and despite its simplicity, it just, I don't know, it feels very complete. I think the drums just work very well. I was thinking that this is like a song that you would probably like listen to in Samurai Champloo if they were to ever make like a sequel or something. Like, would just be the song. Like, it generally feels like he just like Gibbs just reached like peak, like the peak of his, you know, career, or of his himself emotionally speaking. He just feels like very just, I don't know, like mature, or just feel like, you know, I've done a bunch of things and I feel like complete. And I think there might be one day where I just like might disappear and just live out for myself. And overall, I really love Alfredo 2. I think it's a very interesting album. You know, subject matter wise, I thought it was just good, just kind of feel stale. But if anything, it turned out to be an album that surpassed my expectations and potentially surpassed the first part. Like, genuinely, there's so many incredible moments throughout this record, even when Gibbs feels like he isn't necessarily putting 100% of it, because some songs feel a little bit shorter than they wish they should have been. But with every listen, it just feels like it was supposed to happen, and it feels very natural, normal. And I don't know, overall, this thing feels intoxicating. Like, a lot of these songs are like kind of glued to each other, so they transition perfectly and seamlessly, just like the first part. But Gibbs feels more locked in than ever in this album. And he just feels like he has like a lot of things to say that he wants to get out of his chest. You would have expected, with the amount of projects that he's been releasing this decade, he said everything he wanted to say, but apparently we're far from finished. It feels like Gibbs is entering his like second or third or fourth, I don't know how many primes he has, but just basically another prime in his career and in his life in general. It's something amazing to just witness and see an artist and a rapper such as Gibbs just have now, because there's so many artists that just struggle with having some other chapter and they feel like they've said everything. But Gibbs kind of feels like his story is far from finished. It's definitely one of the best hip-hop albums that I've heard this year, and in this decade alone, easily, without a doubt. But yeah, what did you guys think of this album? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, turn notification bell on so you miss an upload from me. And yeah, see you guys next time. And peace out, everybody, and stream Alfredo 2.